What's up, guys? Fat Archon here, bringing another 40k Tactica. Today we're doing a much requested video. Basically, we're gonna go over Chaos Daemons, all the best units for each god. We're gonna go over some list building tips and also go over a tournament winning list. Well, a list that did extremely well in a super major recently. So we're gonna touch all those bases. If you guys haven't already, so this is sort of like an add-on to my full Chaos Daemons index review and tier list. If you haven't already watched that, be sure to check it out, either before or after this video. I went over every single data sheet and the army rules and all that sort of stuff. Actually, I'm kind of proud of that video, so hopefully some of you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully some of you have already seen it. Super ultra quick channel update. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers. I think we're like 50 away, which is just, it's insane. I never thought in 1,000 million years I would actually hit 1,000 subscribers. So thank you, all of you guys who've been like coming along with me. Really appreciate you guys. Can't thank you enough. If you haven't already, do please consider liking and subscribing. Definitely helps the channel, especially likes. If you enjoy what you're seeing, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Anyways, enough of that. So some really quick stuff about the Chaos Daemons. Some things that you want to bear in mind as we go along. One thing that that I think is pretty important: Be'lakor. Be'lakor practically like carries this army on his shoulders, it feels like. I will say, like, okay, he doesn't have to go in every single list. He is kind of expensive. I believe it's 325 points, so kind of spendy. But this dude just brings so much utility, threat saturation, damage. He brings like everything you want to bring along. So definitely something to bear in mind. Speaking of big hitters like that, just greater demons in general are very powerful in 10th edition, at least with how it's currently running. Eventually, when we get our codex, we'll see how it goes, but I will say, like, Monster Mash has been a super popular list for as long as I can remember, so I hope that it continues to be that way. It would be nice if they make, like, non-Monster Mash still just as viable, but, come on, it's a fun way to play, so I hope they never change that. Other things, so what we're looking for when we consider like what's the best unit in the army and whatnot. One of the main things is going to be like points efficiency, or just like efficiency period. Chaos Daemons, so most of the units, it feels like, unfortunately got kind of overpriced, especially troops. Troops definitely got hit kind of hard with the point increases. That said, greater demons, that plays into the whole like why they're pretty good. For what you're paying, they're actually pretty decent. But otherwise, even on the non-greater demons, that's one of the big things we're looking for. You know, are you getting what you're paying for? You definitely want to avoid like overpriced units if you can bring it. You'll notice when I start loading like the competitive list I've written up, you'll notice I really don't bring many troops or similar things like that, because again, they're just way overpriced for what you're getting. Even if you do pick like certain units that potentially are like slightly overpriced, we don't want to go too overboard. You know, you do want to have them. Obviously, it brings some utility to the board. So some really like valuable ones that demons have great access to, like infiltrators. Infiltrators are fantastic. They help for the scoring, the board control, screening, all sorts of stuff. So definitely like them. I think they are like especially valuable, even if you might be paying a little more than the profiles might suggest. On top of that, units that are just like good for scoring, period. Flamers are amazing for scoring. They're only 65 points for 3 of them. They're small unit size, which is another like valuable thing we kind of look for sometimes. Depends on the unit. So these guys are going to help you score great. I wouldn't even like necessarily bring them for the damage output, although they do like a decent amount at range as well. 12 inch, but still range. But that's another thing we're looking for. The scoring, board control, period. Nurglings are like the boss when it comes to that. And then also too, something that demons have in spades are going to be distraction carnifexes. Just a greater demon, like, yes, okay, it's pretty freaking expensive, so it's kind of spendy like distraction that you're tossing out there or whatever. But a greater demon could run as a distraction. You just get a keeper and just rush her straight up the board. The rest of your army just goes and like takes over objectives or what have you. So lots of little like, you know, little advantages that we're looking for when we look for like what's a good unit versus a bad one. So I figure how we'll probably do it, I'll just, you know, jump right in. We'll just go through each one kind of briefly, what I like about them, and, you know, little combos that might come up. At the end of this, or after this part, I'll actually be loading competitive list, or lists that I wrote that I think are pretty good, and we'll also go over that tournament list as well. So to start off, in no particular order, we got Flamers. So I already touched on these guys a moment ago. 65 points for 3 of them, and you get all sorts of goodies with them. 3 wounds, 9-inch move with the fly, flamers, so all of a sudden you got some Overwatch play with that. These guys are just fantastic. Again, you can deep strike them. Don't forget you got the stratagem that lets you deep strike within 3 inches as well. So these guys are fantastic for scoring, because as opposed to Nurglings, first of all, they do have objective control, so you can drop them on objective and actually score it. But also, too, they'll actually, like, contribute damage-wise after you get them down. So, definitely unit to look at. I would argue they're one of the top units in the entire index. So, yeah, definitely take a look at Flamers. Nurglings, these are my personal favorites for demons. I like these guys so much. 40 points for the 12 wounds of Nurglings. Super valuable to have. They don't have objective control. That's going to be one of the biggest downsides to them, but they're itty-bitty, so they're really good for your secondaries, so like behind enemy lines, or or to teleport homers, any of those sort of things, like these guys excel at. They also excel at move blocking, so for your deployment, if you bring enough of them, you can just cover the entire freaking deployment zone. All of a sudden, that might throw a wrench in your opponent's game plan. I actually put out a video all about using Nurglings, so if you haven't checked it out, give it a look-see. Nurglings, definitely like them. Me, personally, I'm addicted to them, kind of. I throw them in almost every single list that I can, so definitely another one to take a look at. They're also, like, super cheap monetarily. They're easy to convert to get, like, multiple bases per each kit you got. Blue Scribes. So these guys, these compete directly with Nurglings. I like them a lot. Some people would definitely argue that they're even better. The main thing is going to be that objective control. So again, you can put them on objective and actually have them score it. They also have really good, like, invul save. A 4-up invul is fantastic versus Nurglings. They only get a 6-up. So these guys die like flies. These guys will actually take some, like, real firepower. Sorta. If your opponent has, like, bolters or, like, storm bolters, better yet, so they're able to put out a boatload of, like, crap firepower, yes, they'll be able to pick them off. Then again, these guys do split, so each time they die, you have a chance of getting a Brimstone Whore. They have terrible, like, range, although it does have -1 AP, so versus, like, Imperial Guard or that sort of stuff, like, okay, it might kill a few models, but these guys, definitely valuable to have. 125 points, a bit more than I'd like, but again, you get some Infiltrate that's able to score. Definitely another valuable unit to have. Ooh, Fleshhounds. I really like these guys. If I was doing a Khorne themed list, like, I would 100% bring these guys a lot of the time. They're cheap. They're 70 points, and they're 2 wounds each. T4 with even a 12-inch move, so fantastic stat line. Like, just the stat line alone for 70 points makes these guys worth bringing along, I think. Again, they work fantastic for board control. They're not going to do that much damage. You know, only 3, admittedly, strength 5 -1, 1 damage attacks each. So not the most, but, like, that's not terrible at all for the cost. I do like these guys a fair bit. I would consider bringing them quite often. If you don't have other units that are able to fill the role of, like, board control or scoring, you can even just sit them on objective and just have them sit there the whole time. Fleshhound's definitely worth looking at. Pink Whores. These are actually one of the best troop options that demons have access to, in my opinion. The pink ones, the pink models, so the main ones, they have 2 objective control each, which is fantastic. They also have that 4-up invul, also fantastic. And these guys split really well. So when they split, you do have to get on a 4-up, but when they split, you actually get 2 blue whores. So these guys can be quite resilient, kind of a pain in the butt to get rid of. So if you're bringing along troops, or you just need something to, like, gum up the board or hold down objectives, etc., these guys are actually pretty good at it. They are slightly overpriced, admittedly, but I still like them a decent bit, for sure. Seekers is another unit. I think these guys are kind of like a sleeper hit. I actually like them a boatload. They're only 95 points for the 5 bases. Again, T4 and 2 wounds. These guys have a 12-inch move, which is, like, great. They do also get a Scout's 9-inch on top of that. So these guys have a pretty good odds of getting a turn 1 charge. So, like, if you plan for it in your list, like, strategize with it, etc., these guys can pull off some nasty tricks. Again, only 95 points, so not the most expensive for the profile again. They can also reroll their advance and chargers. Like, almost everything about these guys I actually really like. For 95 points, I don't think they're bad at all. Keep them in mind, especially if you're going, like, Slaanesh heavy. Slaanesh doesn't feel like she has the most viable units. Those are actually one of them. Skull Cannon. I think I think you might actually see these guys in a decent amount of lists. You know, the reason should be kind of obvious. They give you range, 48-inch range of that, which is excellent. Blast, also excellent. Strength 9, I wish I had better AP, but whatever. -1 AP, 2 damage each. So all those are great. They're like okay at defending themselves in melee, so they can carry themselves there. Pretty great profile for 115 points. So you got the 8-inch move, T9, 9 wounds with that 4-up save. So there's a lot to like with this guy for sure. His ability's pretty decent too. Basically, any unit you hit, you can force a battle shock. There are certain other abilities that'll key off that battle shock. Slash, you know, it's not the best thing ever, and definitely not something to count on. Battle shock in a unit can have some value, especially in the shooting phase. If you manage to pull it off, then you get into melee. Potentially, they can't use like a stratagem to like negate some of your damage or anything like that. Definitely a unit that you keep an eye out for, and they're fun to run too. That's something that definitely makes them worth considering at least. Bloodcrushers. These are another one of the all-stars in the index. One of the best units that I have access to. When it comes to like non-greater demons, I could see some people say that they're the best ones. And, you know, I might even say that too. Flamers are pretty up there, but Bloodcrushers are great. Reason being, so they just have like excellent points to wounds ratio and like resilience. You're in the 10-inch move T7, 4 wounds each, with a 4-up invul for only 120 points for 3 of them. They also have pretty good abilities, so whenever they end the charge on a 4-up, you do D3 mortal wounds for each model in the unit. You bring a fat unit of this, that's going to be like 3 D3 mortal wounds on average. Not bad in the least bit. Obviously, give them the icon and the instruments, so they're getting +1 to their charges, and they have a pretty good leadership. Definitely, like, all around, like, yeah, all around, this is a great unit. I like them a boatload. Soul Grinder. This is probably one of my favorite models in the army for sure, and also it does have like a really good profile in my opinion. He is kind of spendy, so 215 is a bit much, but he gives you access to the range. He has like ultra valuable ability if you go Tzeentch, which is probably the way I do it. He gives you like anti-tank range. This guy is practically the only one you get in the game, or excuse me, in the army, aside from like Infernal Raptus, I believe. Warp Gaze, fantastic. It's a 48-inch range blast, las cannon. Only D3 shots each, unfortunately, but it actually does more damage. It's D6 +2 damage, so when he hits, like, and wounds, the enemy will feel it. I like this guy a boatload. T11 is excellent. The Scuttling Walker rule helps him get across the board. So this guy is also great for, like, threat saturation. You throw him and a couple of greater demons just straight up the board, like, your opponent will struggle to take care of all 3 of them, and, you know, he'll have to pick, who do I want to shoot? The guy who's shooting like laser cannons, the one who's going to slice me up in melee, etc. The other way to run it too is Nurgle. Nurgle gives you access to indirect fire, which is great. Again, that's one of the few units in this entire army that has access to that. I believe maybe Kairos is maybe the only other one, but either way, definitely like this guy. Sick-ass model too. Yeah, definitely consider the Soul Grinder. Plague Drones. These guys are like the runner-up, or like the budget Bloodcrushers, especially if you're going like Nurgle heavy. These guys are one of the better data sheets you have access to. I also love their model, like, come on, giant pus flies, like, come on, that's pretty awesome. They can hold their own pretty well, like, resiliency-wise, so same cost as the Bloodcrushers, only 125 points. You get a 10-inch move, which is insane for Nurgle. T8, 5 wounds each, so that's all great. Unfortunately, only a 5-up invul, so they will take damage a little easier, but the T8, like, kind of helps with that, sorta. They do also have a really good ability and range. The range isn't the best thing ever. It's only 12-inch, but it is blast. But if you hit with those, the rest of your Nurgle units can re-roll the wound rolls. That is an excellent ability to have, especially if you key it off with like Rotigus, for example, who gives you even more damage on top of that. These guys, combined with Rotigus, can make Nurgle kind of viable, I think. A lot of people talk trash and like automatically don't think Nurgle can compete. I disagree with you guys. I disagree quite heavily. In fact, like, sure, I'm not going to say they're the best god in here, but I definitely think that you can make them work. You'll just, you know, take some effort and being a good general. Beast of Nurgle. These guys aren't, these guys are pretty, like, above average. They're not, like, excellent by any means, but I like them a fair bit. Reason being, so they have a really good ability. Basically, at the end of each phase, they regen all of their wounds that they might have lost. They have a T9. Unfortunately, again, only a 5-up invul, but T9 is, like, excellent with the 7 wounds, so they're going to take, like, dedicated firepower. They basically need anti-tank firepower to go into these guys, and again, your opponent's got to choose. Do I do the Greater Demons or the Plague Drones or whoever? 4, or do I try to plink off that 1 or 2 Beasts of Nurgle? Ooh, they look really vulnerable right now. Maybe I'll go for them. I'd much rather lose a 75-point unit than, you know, something actually more valuable. They also, like, they aren't any slouch in melee. 6 attacks. They do hit on 4s, but strength 6, -1, 2 damage each. You toss Rotigus in there, 3 damage each with the dev wounds. Especially if you're doing the Rotigus combo, I think that these guys gain a bit of value, because again, you get 3 damage attacks in your Nurgle army. Definitely like Beast of Nurgles. They're one that you can cut if you needed to, but again, man, they do have some value. Seeker Chariot. This is another one I think is kind of being slept on, sorta. They're cheap. They're only 75 points, which is fantastic. 14-inch move, so extremely fast. You do have the advance and charge stratagem. I'm not sure you'd ever use it on this one, but, I mean, you do have the option of playing on this unit, and suddenly, like, they have a decent chance to get in the first turn charge. You can run them in units of 2 as well, which is interesting. Decent profile. Like, they mulch through, like, chaff, basically. That's their main theme. So, potentially, they can help you clear some screens for your bigger units, your big meter guys, who really don't want to get caught up with a bunch of, like, you know, 1-wound infantry or whatever. Again, super cheap. I don't think they're that bad. The anti-infantry 4-up with the dev wounds, like, yes, that will definitely slice through some chaff for sure. Even Marines, you'll kill a few bases with them. Again, for only 75 points, not bad in the least bit. Also does have a 4-up pinball, so they'll take a decent amount of damage. I do think these guys are kind of slept on. You know, by no means an auto-include or anything, but definitely something worth your consideration. Ooh, okay. Getting on to the Greater Demon. So, pretty much almost every single Greater Demon is, you know, amazing and kind of an auto-include. Basically, you pick your poison on which one you're going to bring, but any Greater Demon, you can't really go wrong with them. The best one, and so in my opinion, the best one by far, and the one you potentially bring like 3 of if you're able to every single time, at least if you're trying to like win tournaments or whatever, Lord of Change. This guy's a freaking boss, hugely. What makes him pop? He's only 230 points. 230 points for a freaking 12-inch move, T10, 18 wound, 4-up save model. That is some of the best that we have access to. Also, on top of that, he has really good range firepower. So he boosts himself with +1 to +1 strength. So when you're using your range profile, automatically it's a strength 10 profile. So suddenly you're threatening vehicles, elite infantry, all that sort of stuff. There's also ways to give him +1 or +2 even strength on top of that. So suddenly he's able to threaten knights at 230 points. This guy's going to take a boatload of firepower to take care of as well. This guy, like, very tip-top of S tier. This guy's one of the best models we have access to. 100%. If you're going to a tournament, bring at least one of them, but try to bring, like, I would bring multiples in most lists, honestly. Next up, we got, so Scarbrand's model, but I mean to say Bloodthirster. Scarbrand's, like, usable, but I do think Bloodthirster's better in most ways, so that's the route I would go. This guy also is fantastic. He's one of the better Greater Demons you got access to. Only 300 points, and for that, you're getting 12-inch T11 profile, 18 wounds with a 4-up save. Again, excellent. He also has very good damage, so this guy can, like, you know, he'll help clear out those knights or other, like, scary units that are in the way. I personally would do the Great Axe pretty much every time, just because, you know, that extra damage and that extra strength really does have some value to it. I like it quite a bit, especially on the sweep profile. If you get caught in with Marines or whatever, this guy will just sweep them aside. Really, for 300 points, this guy's great. Also, too, if you're bringing other Khorne, that +1 to hit is, like, very valuable, especially if you got, like, somehow you get suckered into bringing the Bloodletters or whatever. Try to avoid it, but if you did, this guy helps make them pop. Yeah, there's a lot to love about the Bloodthirster. I think you'll see him in a lot of Demons lists, for sure. Next up, you got Keeper of Secrets. This is another one I think you'll see in a lot of demon lists. She is a bit more expensive. She's 330, so not that much more than the Bloodthirster. I will say, too, her strength is kind of low, so she only goes up to strength 8 and strength 6, so not the best ever. But what does make her good is that profile. So 14-inch move, fantastic. T10, 4-up invul, and 18 wounds. On top of all that, you'll always give her the Feel No Pain, the Shining Aegis. So she has a 5-up Feel No Pain. All of a sudden, she becomes one of the most resilient demons that you have access to, like, period. So I like her a lot in that regard. She's really good at eating up at eating up elites. Elites and, like, small vehicles, not heavy vehicles, but, like, smaller vehicles she's good at. Also, too, her aura is excellent. Her aura gives all Slaanesh Daemons within 16 inch. You improve their AP by 1 for melee. So she alone is going up to AP 3 on all of her profiles, which is great. Toss it on to Demonettes or whoever else you might be bringing along. Helps them, helps them get their points efficiency for sure. Like I said, I think you'll see in a lot of lists for good reason. The Advance and Charge stratagem is especially valuable in her. Ooh, okay, so just for, like, generic HQs, Rindmaster. This is one of my favorite units in the entire book. Another one that I kind of think might be being slept on. This guy's 150 points, so kind of spendy. Pretty okay profile, so 8-inch move, T9, 9 wounds with that 4-up invul, so pretty good for, not the best for the points, but, it's usable. Now, what makes him, like, super good, though, and why I love him so much, his ability, Blood Throne. At the start of the fight phase, you choose an enemy within 18 inches invisible. Until the end of the phase, each Khorne demon, they add 1 to their strength, armor pen, and damage. All of a sudden, this guy alone, this guy is going up to 4 damage attacks, Bloodletter's going up to 3 damage attacks, like, yeah, so much love with this guy. If you're going Khorne heavy or mono Khorne, 100%, I think you just auto-include this guy. He makes all the other profiles that are, like, overpriced and whatnot, he helps them actually be valuable. I think, too, he's really good threat saturation and distraction Khorne effects. If I was fighting you and you had this guy and you had other Khorne units that were going to benefit from him, yes, he would be one of my first targets. So I think, again, that helps your greater demons and your other stuff go do what they're trying to do. I like the Rindmaster a lot. I definitely think you consider him for a lot of lists. Demon Prince on foot. This guy's pretty spendy, 215, but of all the Chaos Demon Princes, I do think he's the best by far. He has, like, excellent ability. So his first one's going to be basically any demon within 6 inches gets the stealth ability, so -1 to be hit at range. Doesn't work in melee, unfortunately, but still, one of your biggest weaknesses is, getting shot at range. So this helps take care of that. He also, too, it's only once per battle, but he can give himself a 3-up invul, which is excellent, one of the best in the game. Then you can also use the stratagem on top of that, so he rerolls the 1s for his failed invul saves. Those two combined makes this guy quite resilient. His profile's great, too. By baseline, he's T10. If you go Nurgle, though, you can make him T11, which does, that's worth considering. 2-up save. He's the only unit in the entire army that has a 2-up save. That is fantastic, especially when you get, cover on top of that. 4-up invul, so, he's pretty meaty. He's, deceptive. He's really expensive, but he's deceptively strong. I like, too, that you can choose how you're going to buff them. So I already mentioned Nurgle, T11. That'd be one of the first ones I consider. The other, Khorne, is quite valid as well. That gets him up to strength 10. So all of a sudden he's threatening vehicles. And Slaanesh is also great, too. That extra 2-inch move doesn't seem like a lot. It's not really, but every bit helps. That helps you get your charge off. That might be the difference between a turn 2 or a turn 3 charge, which is extremely important. I think, so yeah, if you're a newer player for Chaos, and maybe you don't own that many greater demons, 100%, man, take a look at the Demon Prince. He's a great substitute. By the way, I will mention there's certain units in here that aren't the best of the best of the best of the best. And I kind of tried to include them for people who maybe don't own every single model. So I just want to throw that out there. This is sort of geared, or this is meant to help people who don't know demons too well. So I do want to include some in there. Demon Prince kind of counts as that guy. Normally you'd bring a greater demon if you could, but this guy, again, if maybe you don't own the models, or you got a nice little strategy in mind, this guy will do some work. Rotigus Slimex. This guy's my favorite model. Such a cool model. Painting him was so much fun, too. Yeah, I would have 5 of this guy if I could. I like him a lot. His profile's fantastic for the cost. So only 120 points, not that bad. You're getting the T10 and the 10 wins with a 3-up save. So he has a real profile, again, at that points cost. He also has okay damage output. He has a bunch of 3 damage attacks, which is kind of rare for Nurgle. Also, too, his ability to give the you can put Shadow of Chaos in any area train on the battle. There are definitely little sneaky plans and little strategies you can use with that. You can just build around that, deep strike them down turn 2, and then deep strike everything after that within 6 inches of the opponent. Yeah, a lot of clever little strategies with that. I like Rotigus Slimex a lot. Again, maybe you don't own all the greater demons. This guy makes an okay substitute, especially if you combine him with the Beast of Nurgle, which is how I'd usually run him. Exalted Flamer. So this guy, admittedly, if I were to like drop anything in this list, this guy potentially be one of the ones I do. He's not the greatest thing ever, but like the list I wrote earlier today, I had 70 points left over, just enough for this guy. This guy's great. You know, great little addition if you got the points left over and there's nothing else that you really like care about bringing. Pretty decent profile, so the 9-inch move, T4, unfortunately, but 6 wounds with that 4-up invul. He gives your flamers, so you can attach them to. He gives them assault, which is pretty valuable. Also, too, I really like his flames of change. Whenever you hit a unit, you roll a dice on a 4-up, you subtract 2 from their move, advance, and charge, so that can gut a melee unit pretty heavily. So he's not the worst thing ever, not the best thing ever either. Like I said, like of all the units I might delete, he would be one of them, but just bear in mind that you still got him. He's not the worst thing ever, especially his damage is pretty good. You buff it up with the Lord of Change potentially, so all of a sudden it's strength 10, -3, 3 damage each. Not the worst thing ever. Alright, next up we got the big man himself. So, like I sort of mentioned earlier in the video, Be'lakor kind of like carries the army on his back. I do think he, currently at least, he's an auto-include. At least if you own the model, which if you don't, you should go out and get him. There's a lot to love with this guy. So one of the big things is going to be the fact that he gives out the Dark Master aura. Basically, he gives out that Shadow of Chaos aura in 6 inches. There's a lot of clever little like combos you can pull off with that. First of all, there's just your army rule. So any friendly units within 6 inches of them, if you take a battle shock test and you pass it, you get +1 by the way. They're going to regen D3 wounds. If they're battle line, they'll get D3 models back, which again helps pay off for those expensive models. So that alone is pretty valuable. On top of that, the enemy, if they fail their battle shock, which they get -1 to, they're going to take D3 mortal wounds themselves. That can add up. If you're versus a crappy like leadership army, you do have ways of like forcing battle shock. For example, the cannon and whatnot. That can add up. So nice little extra have on top of that. You got like the warp surge stratagem. So when you play like first turn at the end of your opponent's turn, him and a unit within 6 inches of them can go into deep strike. Next turn, what you can do, you can deep strike Be'lakor first. Now, suddenly, you got a 6-inch Shadow of the Chaos bubble around them. You can put the other person you picked up with them, or somebody else you already had in reserve, put them inside the bubble. Suddenly, they have a 6-inch charge versus the enemy. So, another nice little combo right there. Lots of fun little ways to use this guy. On top of that, he has an excellent profile just on its own. T10, 18 wounds with the 4-up invul. He has stealth, so automatically -1 to hit at range. There's the obvious one of Wreathed in the Shadows. So while a friendly demon is within 6 inches, they can't be targeted at range if the enemy's outside 18 inches. That is huge. Like we mentioned earlier, the biggest like disadvantage of demons is the fact that they're a melee army mainly, so they need to find ways to get across the board. This helps with that. Sure, it's 18-inch range is kind of long, but at turn 1, especially if you go first, or excuse me, if you go second, that should like have quite a bit of value in there. Definitely, like I mentioned, bring Be'lakor every time. Just don't even think about it. Kairos. So this guy's pretty decent. So he's kind of spendy. I do think Lord of Change is better. But this guy's like, he's not that much worse. Not that far behind him. He has a great profile. 20 wounds with the 4-up invul. Very powerful there. Also, too, so the reason I like him so much is his one head looks forward. So each time one head looks back. Each time the opponent uses a stratagem, once per battle, you can make it cost 1 more from then on. Also, too, so in my demon review, I read this wrong. Each time they use that stratagem, it increases in cost 1 more time. That is actually crazy strong. So you ever like Custodes, the first time they use it +1, second time +2, third time +3, like eventually they can't even use it anymore. Some of their most important stratagems. That actually like potentially that makes Kairos like way better than I like even imagine. So I like him a decent bit. Also too, like he has good damage at range, especially if you buff him with the Lord of Change. Suddenly he's going up to strength 10. He also has indirect, which is like unique to this army. Aside from the Soul Grinder, lots of things like about Kairos. For sure you consider bringing him, especially maybe for some weird reason you don't like Lord of Change, or you just want to spice up your list. Yeah, he's a good option to have. Talking about good options to have, Shalaxi. She's one of the best characters in the entire game, so obviously that makes her one of the best for demons. I'm not sure if that makes her an auto-include, but she's damn near it. Basically, anything she manages to touch, they're just dead. It could be a freaking knight, it could be whatever, they're dead. If it's a vehicle, a character, or a monster, for sure. She has really good movement, really good profile, period. So 14-inch move is excellent on a greater demon. T10, 20 wounds with the 5-up feel no pain, so she is the most most resilient demon you have access to, unless you do like a great unclean one with the enhancement. Yeah, she is no joke. Again, she will shred any and everything that she gets in combat with. I like too, she plays into the whole distraction and threat saturation and all that sort of stuff. She's kind of expensive to actually be considered a distraction, because she's the real deal. She gets in there, like, yeah, she'll earn some points for sure. But again, it helps the rest of your army do what it needs to do. Definitely like Shalaxi a lot. If you only owned a single Keeper of Secrets, I would just run her as Shalaxi. That's the way I would do it. Next up, we got Rotigus. If you're going Nurgle heavy, especially, this guy... So if you're going mono Nurgle, I would say this guy's an auto-include. If you're going Nurgle heavy, he's just, strong consideration, we'll say. It has a very good ability. Basically, the Virulent Blessing. So start the fight phase, you choose an enemy within 18 inches, so pretty damn good range. Each Nurgle unit that attacks that model gets +1 damage. That is crazy good. On, like, Horticulus Slimex, all of a sudden he's going up to 4 damage attacks. Even your freaking, like, baseline infantry are going up to 2 damage attacks. Lots of value there. I like it quite a fair bit. I will say he doesn't have the most damage for a 285 point model, but it does have a lot of resilience. He's basically like a Imperial Knight, so T12, 22 wounds with the 4-up invul save. Unfortunately, no feel, no pain for some silly reason, but, like, that is a very good profile. And he definitely, like, even if you weren't bringing that much Nurgle stuff, he would still be, like, worth considering. Maybe you don't own the other greater demons, but you do own great unclean ones or whatever. Yes, Rotigus, he'll definitely, like, pull his weight. Haha. He'll pull his weight in the list. I would definitely consider bringing him. And then next up, so, okay, this is another unit that potentially you could take out. If you're going to bring along Plague Bearers, this guy is, like, worth considering at that point. And the whole reason being his Blessed by the Plague God ability. Basically, the unit he's attached to get a 4-up invul. Suddenly, that makes the Plague Bearers, like, extra resilient. Normally, they only get a 5-up, not the best ever. Also, too, like, he doesn't have the worst profile ever. He's only 85 points, so relatively cheap for what you're getting. And that would be T5, 8 wounds. Only a 5-up invul. Well, actually, it goes up to 4-up invul. What am I saying? But, he also, too, he has 2 damage attacks, which I like quite a bit. You buff that up with Rotigus, it goes up to 3 damage attacks. So if you're doing, like, mono Nurgle and you're bringing Plague Bearers, yes, I would strongly consider this guy. Potentially, you bring 1 for each Plague Bearer squad. Granted, that does get kind of spendy, so it is debatable. Next up, we got the Changeling. This is one of my favorite characters in the army, for sure. Has a fun little ability. Formless Horror. Well, first of all, they have Lone Op and Stealth, so they're always -1 to be shot, and then they can't be shot outside 12 inches. On top of that, though, so if you do get in within range, the Formless Horror, each time an enemy unit wishes, so if they just think about it, wishes to select this model as a target, they have to take a Battle Shock test. If they fail, not only are they Battle Shock, which is fine, they also cannot target this model, so that is great. The other one, too, Mischief and Confusion. At the start of your opponent's shooting phase, you choose a model within 12 inches. You roll a dice. On a 2 to 5, they're -1 to hit, which isn't the biggest, at least if they're going to target the Changeling, which a lot of times they won't. But if you manage to get lucky and roll the 6, they just can't shoot at all. Got a 4-up invul, only 75 points, so super cheap with that Lone Op. Also does have objective control, so that's actually kind of the way I might run them. Just put them in the back corner, or put them on a back objective, and just have them sit there. Help screen out the board, and help you get the scoring each turn that the opponent can't shoot. I like changing a lot for the 75 points. Last up, we got Mask of Slaanesh. So she's sort of like the Changeling in the fact that she's a Lone Op, relatively cheap character. She's 105, so kind of spendy for that profile, but she does bring some fun little abilities. So the first one, Eternal Dance. At the start of the fight phase, you choose an enemy unit within 6 inches. Until the end of the phase, each time a friendly Slaanesh unit makes an attack versus them, you add 1 to the wound roll. So that helps, like, your Keeper of Secrets, who only has, like, Strength 6 and Strength 8. Right there, that's valuable. And then each time the enemy makes a melee attack, you subtract 1 from the wound roll. Again, you're Slaanesh, so you usually have pretty low toughness. Like, the Mask herself is only T3 and 4 wounds. And then also she does have Dazzling Acrobatics. Basically, you can advance and charge. Great to have on any model. This model, too, it's debatable if you want to get her within range that quickly. But if you have, like, a really important attack phase that you need to, you need to crush the opponent or whatever, be nice that you can throw her in there. Again, don't forget that you got the stratagem to deep strike within 3 inches, so you could use her Eternal Dance on pretty much any unit you want to. Definitely some value there. That's it for profiles. So we'll go into the list building phase. A couple things before we get into it. So a couple like basics. One thing, so I'll always hammer it into your guys' head. Scoring. Never forget the scoring. Especially with demons, it feels like it's relatively easy to forget that yeah, you need people to like sit back and sit on objectives, or to score your secondaries. You need like units that you can plop down on the corner to get the behind enemy lines, all that sort of stuff. So again, make sure you don't forget cheap little scores, whether it be like just Nurglings, granted they can't hold objectives, blue scribes, flamers are excellent for it, that sort of stuff. So definitely keep that in mind. Again, Be'lakor is practically an auto-include, so you'll probably bring in most lists. In fact, you might want to start each list off by just like automatically putting Be'lakor in there. You do need to like, and part of the reason he's good, you need to find ways to get your units across the board. So where Be'lakor is like especially valuable in that is, again, his little Shadow of Chaos bubble. So that gives you the ability to actually deep strike like big units. A lot of times it's preferable to play a unit on the board than deep strike them, because that 9-inch charge is going to be really freaking hard. Well, you got Be'lakor right here. If you can get them into range, suddenly you can have 6-inch charges. So that kind of like clears up the issue of like losing movement or getting screened out normally when you would deep strike. That said, like even with Be'lakor, A, you can die, and B, you can't be everywhere at once. So do be aware of like the screening that's going to come up, and do like think through what units you're going to reserve. That said, we're demons, we love deep striking, so I do think most games you at least like consider or like practice for deep striking a lot of your units, if not like half of them. Again, greater demons are going to be super common. These are our best profiles in the book, I would say. So I would start off lists with them as well. So toss in Be'lakor, and like even you could even do like most of your lists as greater demons. In fact, we'll see that shortly. That's how it kind of goes in a lot of lists. So don't be afraid to toss in 4 or even 5 freaking greater demons. It's totally valid. Will totally work as well, and it's really freaking fun. Also, too, something I didn't mention in that review is going to be, don't forget that you can soup in Chaos Knights, and in fact, it's definitely arguable that this might be like the way to go, bringing in Knights. There's mainly just 2 profiles, although all of them are valid. Despoiler, I like a lot, so this is the ranged knight. He gives you a whole lot of shooting, which you don't normally have access to, and he can double as sitting on a backfield objective. That said, he'll eventually die, most likely, but with that towering rule and being able to ignore terrain and all that sort of stuff, definitely brings some value. So take a look at that guy. The other option is going to be the Brigand. Brigand is a pimp. You can bring 3 of them, and he, again, gives you a boatload of firepower. Also, again, gives you that board control. You can set 1 of them on a rear objective and then rush 2 of them up. That also, too, is great. Stalkers aren't bad at all. Stalkers, you can, they're characters, which I kind of like. It does go both ways. Bring it down and assassinate can hurt, but they will also give you the melee, so they'll fit right along with your greater demons. So lots of value there. Definitely don't forget at all that you got the Chaos Knight as ally options. Now, before we start showing off too many lists, I do want to have a quick disclaimer. The list I wrote, at least, are mono. They're mono god, just because I want to show, like, you know, what you might be able to do. Maybe you want to do a themed list, show you, like, an idea of what a competitive list might look like. I haven't ran any of these yet, so, like, I won't say that they're, like, tournament winners or anything like that. But, again, they just give you an idea, and they kind of have a theme to them, the ones I'm going to build. That said, again, souping knights might be great. And then also souping multiple gods. I think that, like, automatically is the best way to do it. Mono god, you're sort of, like, handicapping yourself, which is cool. Like, sometimes that's fun. Sometimes you want to prove you're the best. Maybe I'm wrong, and, like, Slaanesh just blows every other god out of the water or whatever. But, again, I do think souping would be the best. So these lists I'm going to load here in a moment could be better, arguably. And then lastly, I tried to include some combos, so we'll try to go over some fun little combos you can use for each Chaos God, and that'll apply to like any list if you bring the relevant units. So we're going to start off with so this was a tournament, didn't win the tournament, he got 4th place in a super major though. I believe his name, I wrote it down, Matthew Geyer. Matthew Geyer played this list, so here, let me load it real quick. I forget what I named it. Winner, there we go, Demons winner. Good work, Mr. Geyer. I appreciate you, like, representing the demons so well, and just Chaos in general. 4th place, by the way, is fantastic at a super major. That's practically, like, winning. That's, like, like 98% of the way to winning the tournament, so excellent work. So this is the list. So 3 Lord of Change, Shalaxi, Bloodthirster, not Scarbrand, Bloodthirster, of course Be'lakor, and then they just brought 3 units of Flamers, 1 6-man and 2 3-man. So this is an interesting list. So this goes sort of goes against my whole like never forget scoring. Granted, he does have it, so the Flamers play into that, and I'm sure too he had like clever little strategies on how to use the Lord of Change and whatnot. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if he deep struck the Lords of Changes. That way he got to choose who he wanted to shoot on his turn, and maybe deployed Be'lakor and these two together and just rushed them up the middle, and then hoped that the opponent wouldn't shoot the Flamers while they sat and got objectives and whatnot. I didn't play the list, I didn't see it get played, so I'm just like guessing here. But this is an idea. So this, again, this got 4th place in a super major. If you just want to, whatever it's called when you copy, net list. If you just want a net list, you know, maybe take a look here and see what you might change to match the models you have, or your idea of a competitive list. Definitely a fun one. Again, Monster Mash. Who doesn't love playing that style of list? Oops. Be more respectful to your list, sir. Alright, let's see. We'll do Slaanesh. Alright, so this is my idea of a Slaanesh list. So, a theme you're going to see through a lot of my list, again, is that I rate scoring quite highly, and like board control quite highly. There's many ways to play 40k, many styles you can go for, but that's the style I'm kind of like drawn to. Still got a fair amount of demons, so of course Be'lakor, every one of my lists is going to have Be'lakor. And then 3 Greater Demons. Of course we got Shalaxi, she's too good not to include, and then we got 2 Keeper Secrets on top of that. Actually brought 3 units of Seekers. Again, for that board control, kind of the style I'm going for this with this list is to get, you know, board control, threat saturation, and hopefully a turn 1 charge. These guys, all 3 of them, maybe, potentially, you deploy them on the line. If you go first, you know, cross your fingers, suddenly they're, you know, they have their pregame move and their 14-inch move. On top of that, like, yeah, they're going to get their T1 charge quite easily, most likely. And then your opponent's like gummed up or distracted by these guys. You got Keeper Secrets coming in right behind them. So the opponent has to choose, like, who do I take care of? Chances are they'll go for the Greater Demons, but that just leaves these guys to, again, move block, gum up the board, hopefully get some objectives. So I do like having them around. Again, Shalaxi's a freaking beast. She'll be like the main one that you want to take care of. And what's great, you know, they got to choose like Be'lakor or Shalaxi or one of the other ones. And even if they take out even 2, you still got a boatload of damage getting up there. So I do like the style of this list. Got the Secret Chariots in there. Again, they're cheap. The reason I brought them, one just going to sit on the rear objective, and then these 2 are going to go for the no man's land, hopefully, while everything else essentially is going to get into your opponent's face. Also, I had the points left over. Potentially you change this out, but I brought the Mask in there. The Mask, what I like is she gives you a nice little combo. So you can combo her with Shalaxi. Shalaxi gives the -1 attack to an enemy unit within engagement range, and then she can make the -1 to hit as well. That can totally gimp certain melee units, for sure. So I like that little combo. Not the worst thing ever. I don't think pure freaking Slaanesh will be the most, like, popular army, but she's definitely viable. I don't think this is that bad a list, all things said. There's obviously a lot of changes you can make. You could delete all the Seekers and just bring, you know, maybe another Keeper Secrets, something like that. Alright, next we'll do Nurgle. Oops. Mr. Nurgle. Alright, so Nurgle, I still think he's pretty competitive. Maybe not the most competitive god, but I still like him a decent bit. He has some fun little combos, too, that we'll talk about in a second. So this list, as you can see, this is like all about board control and scoring. You got the Nurglings, 6 units of them, to go up there and, again, gum up the board and move block. These guys will be exceptional at that. If you go second, they'll only block a 9-inch move, but if the opponent has a bunch of, like, Keepers or some other fast movers, they'll do great at that. If you get first turn, though, yes, you're going to block your opponent in, like, his entire army. Unless they have fly or whatnot, you're going to block them in turn 1, which is fantastic. That alone could win you the game. These guys are pretty cheap as well. And again, you can put some in reserve, you probably should, and then just use them for your secondaries, deploy homers, whatever it is. On top of that, Plague Drones, quite resilient. These guys would go for the No Man's Land objectives, and then all the big hitters, Demon Prince as well. I think Demon Prince has extra value for Nurgle, because again, gives you that damage, which I do like quite a bit, and plays into the resilience, given the -1 to hit at range, even though Be'lakor can help with that as well. I do like it quite a bit. And again, but again, you rush basically all these guys right here, just rushing up the center. The generic Greater Demon strategy of shove them in your opponent's face. I do think this is a pretty fun list that you could run. Again, a lot of changes you could bring. Maybe you don't like the Nurglings, you delete half of them if you want. Maybe you think somehow the Plague Bearers are worth bringing, you could bring them in. I do actually have a second Nurgle list I want to show though. This one, maybe not the most competitive thing. Maybe it is. I don't know. But this is the Nurgle Palooza. I messed up, though. For some odd... I don't know why. I loaded too many Nurglings. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. This just brings as many Nurglings as possible. So, what is it? 6 units of 9? It's ridiculous. It's 720 points, so quite a bit, but you get 216 wounds. And what's cool for sure, you could put like even 3 of these guys in reserve and just use the rest to like completely block the entire half of the table. I think it's a fun little strategy to try. Maybe not the best thing ever, but again, kind of fun at the very least. Rule of cool and all that. For the combo, so you got the, it's a hilarious combo. Use Rotigus with the Nurglings. All of a sudden, your Nurglings are putting out, each base is putting out 4 damage 2 attacks each with lethal hits. You know, no AP and strength 2 or whatever it is, but with the lethal hits, that's not the worst thing ever. Like, you would probably get your points back on them if you use that little combo. I think it's hilarious. Also, too, I mentioned it earlier when I mentioned Demon Prince, but his whole do the 3-up invul and then use the stratagem for the reroll 1s. So he'll be quite resilient with his T11. I do think that's pretty clever, too. So, again, Nurgle especially is like, he's the, like, fun list. The list you bring to, like, have a good time at the tournament or just with your friends. Lastly, we got Khorne. So Khorne has some, like, really good Greater Demons. I like the Bloodthirsters a boatload. I'm not too sold on Scarbrand, honestly, but the rest of them are, like, super valid. So this is basically, like, Khorne good stuff, essentially. The one change, maybe, I would love to have 2 Rend Masters instead of just the 1, but I'm not sure if it works with this list that well. You know, actually, it probably does, to be honest. Maybe delete the Skull Cannon and maybe delete some Flushhounds. But this one, I like this list a fair bit. As usual, generic strategy, shove the big stuff up the board. What's cool about this list, you got a lot of big stuff. So you'd have like entire 3 cores of your army, potentially, just rushing up the board, trying to get in combat. You potentially could table your opponent if they're not like prepared for it, or they don't have like enough shooting or screening or whatever. This will just roll over certain armies. And then Flushhounds, they're just too good not to include at 70 points each, and they play into the whole Nina unit to sit back on objectives and screen. That sort of stuff right there. For the combo, you got freaking Rendmaster, so +1 damage on everything. That is insane. If you get your enough Bloodcrushers into combat with somebody, you boost them up with an extra damage, AP, and strength. Like, oh my god, man. I really like that Rendmaster. Even on the Bloodthirsters, he'll do great. Help them threaten vehicles a bit better. I definitely like that guy a bit boatload. And then on top of that, you got just the Bloodthirster gives +1 to hit to your other units. That is quite valuable as well. Definitely like having that there. Combos off with everybody else pretty well. So, I might have forgotten about Tzeentch. I kept looking over here and seeing these guys, so I was like positive I already gone over them, but I realized, yeah, I might have forgot about them. Regardless, this is the Fat Archon version of the Mono Tzeentch list. As you can see, I put a fair amount of emphasis on like scoring and board control, mainly just by bringing in more troops and more flamers. I will say, I think Tzeentch, I think Horrors are like some of the better troops that Chaos has access to. Admittedly, yes, they're pretty expensive, so you could totally delete these guys and bring something that you think might be more valuable, maybe like a Soul Grinder or something like that. But so long as they get their splits off, so long as they're getting their splits off, in theory, they should like pay for themselves, or at least be worth the points that you're paying for them. So they're pretty annoying to take out. I do like too, so Tzeentch as a whole has like pretty good quality ranged firepower. Obviously, the Lords of Change profiles have like really good output. Obviously, the Flamers are great at output, but even the troops, all of them have like AP1, which I enjoy having. That's pretty valuable to have there. Shooting is obviously always more valuable than going pure melee, because, you know, you're not restricted on who you can charge and have to deal with the silly rules and all that sort of stuff. So I would say Tzeentch is probably the most powerful Chaos God overall, and if you're going to go mono Tzeentch, they're probably one of the choices you'd want to look at first. Obviously, you soup in a couple, like, handy themes from other Chaos Gods if you need them, but overall, I would say they're probably some of the better options, and probably the ones you'll see the most. Flamers are just S tier all around. You can either do the blobs like this or just do the small squads. Use them for, again, the secondaries or holding objectives and the sort. For the combo, it's kind of basic one, sorta. You can run an enhancement on the Lord of Change, so he always gets +1 strength and +2 strength to his range if he's in the Shadow of Chaos. Keep him up close with Be'lakor, and he'll always be at strength 12, so suddenly he's able to like actually threaten knights and mess up any T6 units. So pretty fun combo there. Like I said, overall, I think Tzeentch is one of the best, so this would be a really fun list to run. I don't think it'd do that terrible at all on the board. So, yeah, keep an eye out there. Definitely an army to try. Pretty well. So, that is my best Chaos Demon units and list building tips. 100%, if you guys have any, like, other tips, or maybe you like a different style and you would run a different, like, sort of list, or you've had a good experience with one of the lists you're running, post in the comments below. I would love to see what everybody else is running, see what ideas you have. If you guys think, like, maybe, oh, Beast and Nurgle suck, you never should include that, like, let me know, man. That way I don't bring them up in the future. So, definitely interested to hear what you guys have to say. Again, if you haven't already, do consider liking and subscribing. Gives me the drive to keep doing these videos. I love it. This is like the best thing I've decided to do in a long, long time, so feels good to have you guys here with me. But yeah, man, hope this had some useful tips. Let me know what video you guys would like to see next. This was a viewer suggestion. I'm always all ears for him. I think, truthfully, what I might do, or at least I have plans to do, I want to do each Chaos Space Marine faction. So, generic Chaos Space Marines, World Eaters, Thousand Suns, etc., and the demons I would bring with them. And then the list I would run that way as well. So, yeah, love to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks again for watching, and good luck out there, guys.